everyone. I'm Linda Nickell, and welcome to the Happiness Hour. This is a meeting place that encourages photographers from all over the country to connect, inspire, and create. My guests share tips, techniques, and the stories behind their photographs. The schedule for upcoming presentations is on my website at lindanickell.com. And if you haven't subscribed to the Happiness Hour YouTube channel, please check it out for sessions that you may have missed. Tonight's guest is Morrison. In tonight's presentation, The Art of Creating Fine Art Prints, Morgan will share tips on how to prepare your photographs for printing. She'll talk about setting up your files, choosing your media, and working with your printer to achieve stunning fine art prints. If you're on Instagram, you can find her at Holland Photo Imaging, and you can connect with her through the shop's website, hollandphoto.com. Welcome to the Happiness Hour, Morgan.
Thank you so much, Linda. I'm so happy to be here.
I am happy that you are here. I am so careful about doing, not, doing advertisements or promoting other stuff, but your shop is a shop that I frequent. I go there, I know the product and I know the customer service. And so when I was in there I was putting together, I was able to curate a little exhibit here a couple of months ago. And I went in and I worked with Brian and I said, hey, Brian, any chance I can get you to come talk to my group about, how to export files, what kind of resolution do people need? And he just kind of looked at me, he goes, I really don't do that, but yeah, I'll figure it out. And then the next thing you know, he dished you. So
Yeah.
thank you for coming.
Public speaking, everyone's favorite thing.
I know, right? So, first of all, thank you for coming. And this goes slow so my little brain can take it all in. But
so imagine you go on an amazing trip, you capture an amazing image, moonrise over Half Dome, perhaps. You order a print, you know exactly where you want to hang this photo in your home. You get the print, and wah, disappointment. It's too dark, too muddy, too pixelated. Who's had this happen to them? So what I'd like to talk with tonight is about, like Linda said, setting up your files, choosing your media, and working with your printer to achieve stunning fine art prints. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. So here we are in 2023. Everything's digital. So why print? I don't know if any of you want to enter your answers why you want to print in the chat, but I have a few things why I think it's important to print, even though we're here in this digital age. First of all, I mean, you're not looking at your photos on a phone or computer. You know what it's like to show a friend a collection of your images on your phone. She may view the first image for a few seconds, then just swipe, 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 swipe. It's not very satisfying for you or the viewer. But now imagine people going into a gallery and looking at a collection of fine art photos hanging on the wall. And how long do they take to examine those prints? You'd really have to measure that time in minutes rather than seconds. Looking at the history of photography, the print has been the ultimate way to showcase a photographer's work and their artistic accomplishments. A digital photo is given physical existence when printed, and when it's displayed at your home or in your studio, it becomes a part of your daily life, an ever-present reminder of what's important in life. Another reason why I think it's important to print is because technology becomes obsolete or fails. Prints are really a more permanent storage solution than anything we have today and perhaps may have in the future. A print with archival inks on archival papers is going to last 100 years or more if properly cared for and stored. But what about digital storage? Well, what about it? Remember floppy disks? Think you can retrieve your images from 30 years ago that you painstakingly stored on those floppy disks? Or really even CDs, DVDs, zip drives? Every one of these things is obsolete. Prints stand the test of time. They have staying power. They're as permanent as we can get, and they can literally stop people in their tracks. And then also, printing is good for you, the photographer. Ansel Adams referred to the fine art print as the photographer's performance. The very act of deciding which images to print is a valuable exercise. You have to seriously consider every facet of your photo, from contrast to content. Every element of composition needs to be considered before committing that effort to producing a fine art print. Why would you go through all of that trouble and expense to print, to sign, to mat, and frame your image if you did not think it was truly worthy? All right. So setting up your files. Much of getting a quality print relies on knowing how each of these elements, pixels, PPI, DPI, resolution, print size, and color, will affect your art from the beginning and throughout the process. I'm sure you're all familiar with pixels. A digital image is formed by these tiny squares called pixels that contain only one color. When you zoom out or stand farther away, you stop seeing the pixels and see the image as a whole. Pixels are measured in the number of pixels per inch, or PPI. The more pixels per inch, the sharper your image will appear when printed. Conversely, the fewer pixels per inch, the more likely you are to encounter pixelation when you can see the edge of each pixel. And then PPI and DPI are often used interchangeably. PPI means pixels per inch and is the number of pixels within 1 inch of an image displayed on the computer monitor. DPI is dots per inch and is the number of printed dots within 1 inch of an image printed by a printer. Some important things to remember about pixels and PPI. You can't really modify the number of pixels in an image. If you want to resize the images, you're changing the PPI. So that's okay to do if you're downsizing, which means that you're putting more pixels per inch to achieve a smaller image size. The trouble can happen when people want to upsize. Oh my goodness. Upsizing is usually not advisable because you'll start to lose image quality and you might end up with a pixelated image. Technology is changing, particularly with AI. If you really need a larger image size than your native file, you may be able to use an image enlargement software like Topaz, GICLEE AI, or Adobe Super Resolution to increase the image dimensions. But that is, that's kind of our future. But right now, you really need to be careful when you're upsizing images. And then image resolution. So the term resolution, I think, is really one of the most confusing in digital photography. Is it about the image quality? Is it about file size? Does it matter if you're only going to use your image on a computer screen? Essentially, a photo's resolution is the number of pixels it has. And you can determine how many pixels are in a photo by multiplying the pixels on the width by the number on the height. For example, if you have an image size that is 1200 by 1800 pixels, the actual number of pixels in that image is 2,160,000, which means it has a 2.1 megapixel resolution. However, when we're talking about printing, or resolution or image resolution means the number of pixels per square inch on the printed paper. For many years, 300 ppi has been considered the image resolution standard for what makes a digital print that is visually similar to an analog process print from film. Okay, and print size. One of the most common questions we get at our lab is, how big can I print? How large can my photo be? And determine how large you can print an image, start by checking its resolution or pixel dimensions, and then divide by 300, the ideal PPI for printing. Let's say you have a photo again that's 1200 by 1800 pixels. Then you can print it, if you want to print it 300 PPI, it could be a 4:6 print. However, if you don't need that highest quality of DPI or PPI, you can lower the PPI to make the print size larger. For example, by reducing the PPI to 120 from 300, the print size could then increase to 10:15. You can play around with this if you're using Photoshop. You'll want to look at the image size, and you'll want to have the height and the width and the resolution all connected, and uncheck resample and just kind of play around with changing some of those dimensions and see, how you can change your photo there, like how large you can go or how small it would print depending on the different PPIs. So while 300 PPI is considered kind of the standard for high resolution printing, 250 or 150 PPI really may be good enough for your situation. So many factors can play into this, including a person's visual acuity, viewing distance of the print. They certainly play a role in what's an acceptable print resolution. We generally want to see a photo have at least 120 PPI at its print size before we start seeing a loss of quality or pixelation when that image is outputted. All right, color. So color management is a set of systems and standards that attempts to translate the reality of the color captured on your camera to the image displayed on your screen and are printed on paper. And there are lots of software algorithms that try to make this translation as accurate as possible. And most of this occurs in the background. Lightroom, for example, takes the picture data from your camera and automatically is translating it into the right color space for your monitor. However, as a photographer who wants to create a print on paper, you should be aware of a few of the aspects of this process that could affect the end result. The main pieces you'll want to focus on if you're thinking about printing are 2 ICC profiles. And ICC profiles refers to a set of data that defines a color input device. Your camera, for example, or a color output device, for example, your monitor or the printer. The first ICC profile you want to concern yourself with is for the monitor. And then that second piece is the ICC profile for the printer/paper combination that you're using to generate the print. It's really important if you're thinking about printing to check with the printer, the lab that you're going to be using, to find out which color profile their printer uses so that you can edit your image in the same space. For example, we use Adobe RGB 1998, which has been a widely adopted as a working space because it provides like a large and balanced color gamut that can easily be reproduced on a variety of devices. Some things to sort of keep in mind when you're thinking about color management. one of the most important things to do is to calibrate your monitor. Monitor calibration is the process of measuring and adjusting the colors on your computer monitor to match a common standard. There are several systems and devices. Most people are familiar with Data Color Spider device that you can use to calibrate basic parameters for your monitor, including the white point, the black point, the contrast ratio, the brightness. Professionals recommend calibrating your monitor about every 6 months to make sure that your colors are staying consistent, especially as your monitor can degrade and its color changes over time. Without an accurate monitor profile, you're really kind of dooming yourself to constant irritation because what you see on your screen, the colors are not going to resemble the final print that you make. A couple other things that you can do: adjust your computer desktop, adjust your monitor desktop so that you have neutral colors on the screen margins. Try not to use wild colors as your screensaver. And when you're working on your photos, kind of minimize these other like computer distractions around, like tabs that you have open that have really loud colors. It's also helpful to proof against white to help you judge color. When judging color and the density of an image, proof it against white rather than dark gray or black for something that's going to be a little more like accurate. And then just in your room, trying to control the light sources that you have where you're working. The viewing light that you work under is critical. Make sure that you have adequate but not too much light. Try to keep your light sources consistent and obviously avoid any glare on your screen. And then even beyond the light in the room that you're working on, or working in, sorry, the colors of your walls, the clothing that you're wearing can all have an effect when you're trying to judge color. So it's best to try to have neutral colors on your wall and your clothing when you're editing your photos. And then, of course, take a break. When your eyes become exhausted after staring at the screen for too long, take a rest, ease the eye strain, which can also change your perception of color. Most experts recommend, not just for working on editing photos, but to take those 15-minute breaks away from your monitor. So some of the most common printing issues we see. Well, let me step back for a sec. So it's important as a photographer and as someone making prints to have a reasonable understanding of color management and color spaces, but really like absolute color accuracy is not the first thing on the list of challenges that people make when making prints. One of the biggest issues is people think that their prints are too dark. This is definitely one of the biggest challenges. And part of this issue comes from the nature of reflected light as opposed to transmitted light. So at best, really under perfect viewing conditions, a print on paper might have a 1:100 contrast ratio in terms of blackest blacks and whitest whites. But compared to transmitted light, the light that's coming from your monitor, it's common to have a 1:1000 contrast ratio from the blackest blacks to the whitest whites. So having that huge difference, it's really difficult to judge shadows and midtones and how they'll render on paper. So some of those things come from experience, and the more you're printing, the more you'll get a feel for kind of how your monitor is working with a paper print. The other part of the dark print issues is that most people have their monitor just way too bright. If you have a newer desktop display, a high-end laptop, the displays are really incredibly bright. And most people are running their monitors at full brightness indoors and even in the dark. And this is just a recipe for prints that are consistently far too dark. So I would recommend turning down your monitor brightness to give a more representative impression of these midtones and shadow values and how they'll look on paper. Another issue that people run into are prints that seem too warm or too cool. And while this can sound like a color accuracy and color management issue, it's really not in terms of absolute color accuracy or precision in matching colors. What can happen is really sort of going back again to the monitor. Prints may look too blue, too cool when you're looking at them on the screen, just because monitors tend to be too blue. And so we'll try to over adjust, and the prints will come out kind of too orange or too yellow, which really makes skin tones not look great. And then greens in landscapes not look very well either. So typically, like, you'll want to just try to, again, it's sort of experience trying to adjust the white balance. But this is also one reason calibrating your monitor can help. Although calibration is not a cure-all. So sort of going again, besides kind of working, like adjusting your monitor, making sure it's not too cool or too warm, not too bright. Again, sort of looking at the room that you're working in, that's not too colorful, it's fairly neutral. All of those things can help when you're trying to figure out the color there on your screen. And again, sort of going back to the experience, just sort of the more you edit, the more you print, the more you're going to kind of be able to fine tune how you want your photographs to turn out. One thing we hear quite often is, my photos, my prints, they don't match the way they look on the screen. And really, it's almost impossible to do that. Again, kind of going back to the nature of the reflected light, the paper print versus the transmitted light of a computer monitor. So one thing that we kind of recommend people when they're, sort of getting into printing, new to printing, or you want to make a large print, besides just trying to proof on your screen or on your monitor, is to actually do some little test prints. This is a good way to check both the resolution and color before you're making your final print. On-screen proofing can be sometimes sufficient for prints where color values are less important, but hard copy proofs are really the most accurate way of proofing your image. You can do press proofs where you get your image printed on the same material as the product that you're going to use at the end. And that's really the best way of achieving a truly accurate, representation of what your print is going to look like. So fine art printing, called GICLEE, very fancy French, spelled GICLEE, but pronounced GICLEE. This is used to produce pieces of artwork such as paintings, drawings, watercolors, and create physical copies of artwork that was created digitally. The name, again, comes from the French, which means that which is sprayed or squirted, which makes me laugh because it's such a fancy name for such a funny little definition. But GICLEE printing is the type of inkjet printing where a printer creates high quality prints by spraying ink with a great deal of precision. Not all inkjet printing is GICLEE printing, but all GICLEE printing is inkjet, and it also represents kind of the highest quality of inkjet printing. So GICLEE printing will have the following qualities. First, it's employing an inkjet printer and it has specialized ink. The ink is very important. GICLEE printing uses pigment-based inks. And this is one of the things that really sets it apart from standard inkjet printers that use dye-based inks. Pigment inks pair very well with archival quality paper. They offer greater longevity by producing a print that prevents fading. And these inks should last, again, sort of between that 100 and 200 years with proper care before they begin to fade. A GICLEE print also features high resolution and color. You'll notice on a standard inkjet print that the print may not fully match the appearance of the original piece of art that it's attempting to reproduce. A GICLEE print comes at that highest resolution with a full color spectrum so that the original piece of art is matched as closely as possible. GICLEE prints, the printers often have multiple inks. Like the two printers that we're using for these types of prints, one has 10 different inks and the other has 12, just to get that full spectrum of color. And then finally, a GICLEE is going to be printed on archival papers. The print's known for its superior durability compared to other prints. GICLEE prints are applied to archival quality paper, which should stay in its original state for years. To be considered archival paper, it meets standards from the American National Standards Institute, or ANSI. A GICLEE paper substrate should be 100% cotton or rag-based paper, along with being acid-free. And this paper makes sure that your print doesn't lose its quality, deteriorate, or fade over time. And kind of the really fun thing that I think about printing is all the different paper choices. I love when people come in, have an image, and they're kind of amazed at all the different options that are out there, and really how paper can make such a difference in how your image reproduced and looks. Of course, you'll always want to use archival quality paper, but you still have some choices about the finish, the brightness, and the weight of the paper. So here's a few things to kind of think about when you're choosing paper for your prints. So finish, there's 3 main finishes: matte, semi-gloss, otherwise known as luster or satin, and then glossy. And each of these finishes has its own kind of unique advantages. Glossy paper tends to work really well with color images that have a lot of contrast, such as colorful car photos, food photography, certain landscapes, wildlife photography. They work great for fashion images. The main drawback of glossy paper is really its reflectivity. So if you're going to be framing something behind glass, glossy is usually not the best choice because it's just magnifying that reflectivity. images printed on a glossy paper tend to look sharper than those printed on other surfaces. However, sometimes printing on like a matte canvas, for example, or another textured paper can hide the reduced detail in a lower resolution image. So you might be able to kind of get away with printing a low res image on a textured paper, and you won't notice maybe that pixelation, if there is any, as much. Luster papers, the semi-gloss or the satin papers, they tend to have a more muted look than glossy papers. But I think these are sort of the workhorse or like the most versatile papers. They work well with portraits. They work well with images that have a wide dynamic range, lots of colors, and have a really crisp focus throughout. And then matte papers, these tend to work well with softer images and black and white images. Matte papers sort of give that like muted, ethereal, painterly look. And the fun thing about the matte papers is they have such a variety in kind of surface texture. Some can be very smooth and some are just so toothy and just so fun to touch, so textile, that they're really great to use. And a really great paper for high-end photography, high-end fine art photography, are the Baryta papers. These are really interesting. They have a texture very similar to fiber-based paper used for darkroom prints. The Baryta paper uses a chemical called barium sulfate in its coating process. And this chemical enhances an image detail and definition while slowing the print's aging process. A lot of galleries or museums, when they're showing photography, they're actually printing on Baryta paper if they're not having silver darkroom prints made for the exhibition. And then kind of thinking about going back to the brightness of the paper, although a paper can seem bright on its own, the brightness of the paper can actually, or different papers can range pretty significantly. For images that have bold or bright colors, you would want to choose something that has a very bright white base. At the opposite end, if you'll want to have a paper that's on the low end of the brightness scale when you print more subdued and lighter colors, so you're not competing with your image. And if you have obviously a mix of colors in your print, stick to papers with a medium brightness. And then the weight of these papers. The weight of photographic papers is its GSM rating. The higher the number, the thicker the paper. Most photographic papers range from about 100 to 325 GSM. People who are making the GICLEE prints, they often use a thicker paper, like the more on the 325M GSM. And these thicker papers can help with framing, just because they're going to help the print lay a little flatter, cut down on any like wrinkling or waving or tearing if you're framing. So printmaking is just a constantly evolving art. And I think developing a relationship with a printer, it's a collaborative process. I think it's so important to sort of work together to create the image that you have in your mind. I really hope that this little presentation has helped inspire you and motivate you to experiment and really have fun while achieving your artistic vision. And I hope it's given you a few tips or printing smarts to kind of allow you to produce those prints that you'd like to see on your walls. Thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. I'm going to get you to take down your screen.
Yeah.
This is a good time. If you have questions, put those in the chat, and we're going to, there are a couple that I'm going to put in front of you. Right
Yeah.
off the bat, can you spell Beretta paper? Somebody was asking.
Oh, sure. It's funny. It's Baryta.
Would never have come up with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like GICLEE.
Yeah, it's a little off. Donna's curious, can you recommend the percentage of brightness for your monitor when we're editing?
Hmm. I don't have a percentage to recommend, but I think if you are using like a calibration system, it will it will do that for you. It'll find the the proper brightness for your screen.
Right. Laura's question is, do you ever print on non-paper mediums, metal, etc.? What are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's the exciting thing. There are so many non-paper mediums. We do a lot of prints on aluminum metal panels, and those are fun because there's almost as much variety in them, where you can have, the metal showing through, or it's having the initial panel has sort of a white base, so you're getting that photorealistic look. They come in glossy or matte versions. There's some that are textured that are really fun. And then there's wood, printing on like a natural like wood panel. So I think all of those are like great experience, I guess, experiments, or having the right image,
Yeah, I
can
went
be
through
enhanced. Yeah.
I went through a phase of getting you guys to print on acrylic. I went
Oh
through
yeah.
acrylic phase, and I love them.
hmm
Have moved away from that now, but they were a lot of fun. Um, saw another question in here real quick. Karina's, this is what it was. She said you didn't mention canvas. Is that
Oh
something
sure.
to recommend? Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure. Yes, Canvas is a great option also. Um, I mean, Canvas is really nice because if it's stretched and it's ready to hang, you don't have to worry about a frame if you don't want that. Yeah.
Julia is
Mhm.
asking, do you have any recommendations for monitors that are good for editing photos for print? She's heard
Hmm.
BenQ is good.
Uh,
Something you can address.
let's see. I'm sorry, could you repeat the kind of monitor you were mentioning?
She's wondering if you
Oh,
had any
BenQ. Oh,
Ben.
okay. Um, I'm not familiar with that one. I mean, I think like I know there are lots of kind of specialized monitors out there. I don't think you have to have a specialized monitor. I think having like just a really good consumer monitor, and again, sort of doing those checks about the calibration, sort of checking how cool or warm it's going. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not familiar with any of those, Julia.
Yeah.
Um, Susan's question is she's been confused about
Yeah.
this. Should I
Yeah.
calibrate my laptop monitor or my external monitor that I use when I edit?
Well, I guess I would say both if you're using both to look at your photos, right?
Yeah, I would make sure that both of them were. Um, Susan's question is, can you speak more about the color profiles? When
Sure.
putting to a printer online, what format should you send your file in?
Uh, that's going to depend a lot on the printer. So, I mean, this is almost sort of where, like, maybe where you begin your relationship with a printer is contacting them and talking about what color profile they are using, and then also what format files they want.
Let's see here. Coming to the end. We're okay. Susan says, did I understand that you said glossy doesn't look good behind glass?
The challenge of glossy photos behind glass is that kind of extra reflection. Like glossy paper is reflective, and then putting it behind glass is just doubling that.
Would
Yeah.
it would it help if she used non-glare or non-reflective type of glass? Does that cut into it a little bit?
I mean, sure, like that can help, but generally, yeah, I mean, it's sort of the non-reflective glass is more for like environmental glare that's coming in. So it would help some, but it's not going to totally get rid of the reflection there. Yeah.
Karina is asking, oopsie, let's see here. My screen just jumped. Where did Karina's go? Are you better off to proof on your laptop monitor, or does a larger desktop monitor work better? Does it make a difference? When he finds that when I proof on one and then look at the desktop monitor, my laptop monitor and my phone, they all look different.
Right. Because they probably are.
Are different. Yeah. I was like, Karina, pick one. Make that commitment to one of them. Yeah.
Uh-huh.
You have any other response than what I just said?
No, no, like, yeah, either, I mean,
think it's
I think using, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I think it's workflow. What's if you have a dedicated, this is my 2 cents, Karina. If you have a dedicated place that you always edit, stick with that computer, stick with that monitor. If you can work off a larger monitor, always choose that over a laptop, because laptops, if I'm such I'm terrible at this. I might edit on from my couch, and I'm, kind of like wobbling the laptop on my lap, and you get the light change. So don't do that. Don't do as I do. So if you have a chance, if you have a really good large desktop monitor, pick one, calibrate both of them. But if you had to choose the desktop monitor. So let's see, that was that one. I think that is all the questions. If I missed one, you guys have 2 seconds to type in here real quick. Oh, yeah. So Susan's, let me ask you this, Susan, Morgan. Susan's asking, is there a link for your lab? So you'll go to the website. That's probably the easiest, right? To
Yes.
do that. And so you guys, I mean, I'm lucky because y'all are just kind of down the street. So I can go in there and, like, hey, look at this. But you guys work with people on the phone and online orders, right?
We do. Yes. So if someone is outside of Austin and wants to work with us, we're happy to do that. We love to do that. If anyone would like paper samples, we're happy to send those out. If you want to email me and request those, we're happy to get those out to you. Yeah.
So when let's see, there's one more question in here. Let's see, what do you mean by proofing on computer?
Mm. Um, I guess just like if you're like rather than printing out a hard copy, like when you're doing your edit and you think you're at your like final edit, that would be just proofing on the monitor versus making a physical print.
Um, I blinked and then a couple more questions popped up. So I'm going to hold you and see if we can answer these. John's wanting to know, do you drop ship?
Yes, we do.
For those that don't know what that means, what does that mean?
We have artists or photographers who use us for their print sales. So when they get an order, they place it with us and then we ship it to their customer for them. There's no like receipts or any information from us in the package.
Perfect. Let's see here. There was one more question. Trisha's question is luster paper okay under glass?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I think that's yes, like luster is a nice choice. Like I was saying, it's so versatile. It's great for framing. It still has, those some of those vibrant colors that you have with glossy paper, but you're not going to have that extra reflection.
I lied. There were a couple more questions. I knew this was going to be a great topic because you guys are asking all the questions that I have for myself. Louisa wants to know, what size do you recommend for test prints?
Oh, sure. We I guess it sort of depends on the final size print that you're going to do, but we do sort of two types of prints, test prints. We'll do somewhere in the range of 8x10, 8x12 if you want to look at your full image. Or we do a strip of the full size image, like say you're getting a 30x40. We'll do like a 6x30 strip of that so you can kind of get a sense of what it's going to look like at the final print size.
Another question from John. Does your website have a test or calibration prints ordering option? Is that something that they could?
We do, yeah, we do not have, you can't order those test prints online. But if you email us and would like to order a test, we can take your order that way.
I like this question, Susan, because you will have seen more of these than us. Do most photographers sign their photos that they sell? Are you seeing people with their watermarks on their photos?
Yeah.
What do you see more of?
I don't think we see a lot with watermarks. But I really think more people should sign their photographs. Yeah, I think everyone should sign their artwork. I would like to see more of that.
So I don't know the answer, but maybe Morgan will. Susan's this is going to be my last question. Do either of you know if it's correct that a MacBook cannot be calibrated? I don't know the answer to that.
I don't know either.
Yeah, you know what I would suggest, Susan? Apple, because I was just in there. Apple has a whole group of people that kind of like specialize with there's like more graphic things. So that might be that's a technical question for them. I don't know the answer. I don't even want to guess because I can calibrate my MacBook Pro, but I don't have that extra monitor, so I don't know. That seems weird that you wouldn't be able to, but you know, I don't know the answer to that. So I'm sorry, we're going to leave you hanging on that one. All right, Morgan, I'm going to close out this session and thank you for doing this.
Oh, thank you so much.
This is kind of a printing 101, and it's a valuable resource. I'm definitely gonna have to go back and watch this because I'm just kind of half listening, because when you got into the technical stuff and started doing math on me, I was like, wait a minute. So I'm definitely gonna watch this again because just for my own kind of knowledge, but I don't really feel bad if it doesn't sink in, because I'll just kind of waddle into the store and somebody by that counter is always willing to help me, and I so appreciate the customer service that you guys have given me and some of the people that I send to you, because it's nice to have a local shop. So I really appreciate that. All right, you guys, you can connect with Morgan through Instagram. You can find her at Holland Photo Imaging, and you can connect with her through the shop's website, hollandphoto.com. Next week, Sean Allen Stone will be here to present Perspective Shift, Black and White Photography. Until next time, go out and create something beautiful, and I hope that we see you again soon.